Before Peter the Great rewired Russia, before empire, before beards were taxed and Europe was dragged east by force. Russia is ruled by a man who can barely stand. Tsar Fyodor III, son of Tsar Alexei, sickly from childhood, in constant pain, physically fragile in a country that respected strength and very little else. Which is why history keeps expecting him to be irrelevant. He isn't. In just 5 years, Fyodor lays the foundations of a modern army, lowers taxes, expands borders, replaces wooden Moscow with stone, and pushes Russia towards secular education. Briefly, things improve. Then, as it had his entire life, illness comes back to finish the job. And like so many moments in Russian history, optimism survives right up until it doesn't. Fyodor dies in 1682, and the problem Russia has been politely ignoring steps into the room. In 1682, when a Tsar dies with no clear heir, power does not fall neatly into the next pair of hands. It gets negotiated by the boyars, Russia's highest nobility, landowners, office holders, men whose loyalty lasts exactly as long as it benefits them. They don't rule directly, that would be vulgar, but they decide who does. And right now they're split, not by ideology, not by policy, but by family. The Miloslavskis, relatives of Tsar Alexei's first wife, Maria Miloslavskaya. Their candidate, Prince Ivan, 15 years old, almost blind, physically disabled, and cognitively limited. And the Narishkins, family of Alexei's second wife, Natalia Narishkina. Their candidate, Prince Peter, 10 years old, healthy, intelligent, and inconveniently competent for his age. An hour after Fyodor's death, the Boyar Council, backed by Patriarch Joachim, declares his half-brother Peter the new Tsar. For the court, this means one family is in and another is out. For Sophia Alexeyevna, it means the end of everything she has quietly been planning for years. Sophia is a Tsarevna, a Russian princess, which in the 17th century Russia is less a title and more a life sentence. Russian princesses do not marry, they do not travel, they do not appear in public. No Russian man is noble enough. Foreigners aren't orthodox, so they live out their lives in semi-monastic isolation behind curtains and walls. They leave the palace only for church or major ceremonies. When they travel, carriage curtains are drawn. If they walk, attendants hold up drapes so no one can see them. Their amusements are swings in summer, sledging in winter, court musicians occasionally. Their education ends around the age of 10. After that, their job is prayer, embroidery, and not becoming a problem. It is a system specifically designed to prevent ambition, and it works, until Sophia. Sophia does not accept her assigned fate. She begs her father Tsar Alexei to continue her education alongside her brother, the future Tsar Fyodor III. He agrees, and from that moment on, she diverges sharply from every princess before her. She studies philosophy, theology, rhetoric, Polish and Latin. She reads widely, writes plays, debates ideas. Her tutor, Simeon Polotsky, remembers her as curious, sharp, ambitious, strong, and intellectually hungry. Not traits generally encouraged in secluded royal daughters. Sophia has a hero, Pulcheria, a 5th century Byzantine princess who ruled as regent for her brother. That story lodges itself in her mind and refuses to leave. You see, Sophia does not want marriage. She does not want children. She does not want to fade politely into obscurity. She wants to rule. And for the first time in her life, history cracks the door open. Sophia's plan is simple. Her brother, Prince Ivan, becomes Tsar. Ivan cannot rule. Sophia governs for him. She becomes Russia's Pulcheria. It is not a terrible plan. It is just 1 hour too late. The boyars choose her half-brother, Peter, a healthy child over a disabled one, a future over a liability. And Sophia understands something immediately. If she accepts this, she disappears forever. So she does what Russian princesses are never supposed to do. She fights. Sophia does not have an army, but Moscow does. The Streltsy, musketeer regiments stationed permanently in the capital, 26 regiments, over 22,000 men. They are not peasants with pitchforks. They are armed, trained, and very, very angry. Their wages are paid late, sometimes years late. Officers skim their pay. Some force them to work estates like serfs when not on duty. They have privileges on paper, humiliation in practice. They are already close to revolt. Sophia's supporters push them the final inch. They whisper that the Narishkins poisoned Tsar Fyodor, that they murdered Prince Ivan to secure power. None of this is true, but truth is not what revolts run on. The Streltsy march on the Kremlin. At first, Patriarch Joachim tries to calm them. He brings both princes, Ivan and Peter, before the crowd, alive, unharmed. It should end there. It doesn't. The Streltsy surge into the palace anyway, because now they're not looking for answers. They're looking for blood. They hunt down the Narishkins and their allies. This includes Artemon Matviev. Matviev is not just a courtier. He is a senior statesman, former head of foreign affairs, a trusted advisor to the Tsar and one of the most capable men the Narishkin faction has. He had just returned from exile. He barely has time to understand what is happening. Young Peter clings to him as the mob storms in. The Streltsy shove the 10-year-old Tsar aside and drag Matviev away. He is hacked to pieces, not executed, not sentenced, torn apart. Nearby, Boyar Yuri Dolgorukov is dragged behind the gates and stabbed to death. His body is mutilated again the next day, just to be certain. The violence spreads. The treasury is ransacked. Boyars are hunted through corridors. Servants are thrown from windows. A steward in the Patriarch's chambers is hurled out and left hanging from a rope. For 3 days, Moscow belongs to the Streltsy. Peter watches this, up close. He sees relatives murdered, allies butchered, authority collapse into chaos. This is not a rumor for him. It is a memory, and it will not fade. Eventually, the violence pauses. The Streltsy make demands. Ivan and Peter must rule together. And Sophia must be regent. Russia agrees. A double throne is built, with a small window cut into the back. During audiences, advisors whisper instructions through it, telling the young Tsars what to say. Peter listens, Ivan struggles, and Sophia rules. She has done what no Russian princess ever has. She has escaped the tower, but she has done it by unleashing armed men inside the Kremlin. And somewhere inside the boy sitting on the throne, something hardens. Sophia Alexeyevna has won. She has forced the boyars to accept her. She has bent the Streltsy. She sits at the center of the Russian state. But power in Moscow does not forget how it arrived. Everyone remembers the blood. The boyars remember which doors were smashed in. The clergy remember which sanctuaries were violated. The Streltsy remember being promised justice and paid in panic. And Peter remembers everything. Sophia understands this, which is why she governs at speed. She orders all arrears paid to the Streltsy, even melting down royal silverware to do it. She confirms their privileges. She avoids confrontation. This is not generosity. It is fear management. Idealism does not survive first contact with armed men. After the revolt of 1682, Peter does not remain in the Kremlin. This is not an accident. The palace has proven itself dangerous, not just politically, but physically. Peter has watched trusted men dragged away and butchered inside its walls. He has learned, far too young, that proximity to power can be fatal. Officially, Peter is sent away for his safety. Unofficially, his absence is convenient. Sophia rules from the Kremlin alongside Ivan. Peter remains Tsar in name, but not in practice. He is not consulted, not trained for rule, not included in governance. The expectation is simple. If he is kept distant long enough, he will grow up irrelevant. Instead, he grows up elsewhere. And that changes everything. Peter lives with his mother, Natalia Narishkina, at Preobrazhenskoye. She is fiercely protective, politically cautious, and determined to secure her son's future in the ways she understands, including marriage. In 1689, she arranges a bride for Peter, Evdokia Lopukhina. She is pious, conventional, entirely uninteresting to him. Peter, for the most part, is not intentionally cruel, just uninterested. He prefers women who think, who argue, who push back, strong women, intelligent women, beautiful women. Peter, it should be said, loves women. Women who are not his wife. This will become a pattern. The marriage is dutiful, short-lived in spirit, and emotionally irrelevant. Peter retreats to what does make sense to him. War. Not the heroic kind, the mechanical kind. At Preobrazhenskoye, his military games begin. Local boys, mock battles, wooden weapons. Courtiers laugh and call them Poteshnia Polki, toy regiments. The name sticks. The mistake is assuming Peter is joking. He drills relentlessly, studies Western manuals, invites foreign officers, Dutch, German, Scottish, to train him properly. He insists on learning everything himself: marching, artillery, fortifications, command. Mistakes are punished. Competence is rewarded. The games harden. The boys grow up. Two regiments emerge, the Preobrazhensky and the Semyonovsky. Modern, disciplined, loyal to Peter personally. They are not tied to the boyars. They are not indebted to the Streltsy. They have no nostalgia for the old order. They are young, which means they have not learned how to betray efficiently. In Russia, this makes them dangerous. More importantly, they work. The formations Peter experiments with, linear drill, coordinated volleys, disciplined command structures, do not vanish with his childhood. They become standard. Elements of the training, organization, and battlefield discipline developed in these so-called toy regiments survive Peter himself. They pass into the Russian army. They are refined. They are institutionalized. The games do not end. They simply stop being called games. Word spreads quietly. Boyars begin to notice that Peter is not idle. Foreign officers realize he listens and remembers. Even the Streltsy sense something unsettling. Sophia hears about the toy regiments. She underestimates them. After all, toys do not overthrow governments, except these ones will. At court, Sophia still rules, but the ground beneath her is no longer solid. Her greatest shield remains Prince Vasily Golitsyn. Educated, Western-facing, diplomatic. He gives Sophia legitimacy, continuity with Fyodor's reforms, a sense that Russia is being guided, not seized. Contemporaries call him the Great. Moscow has not yet learned to be suspicious of flattering nicknames. Golitsyn believes Russia's future lies in diplomacy, treaties, and managed reform, not endless war. Left to his own instincts, he would have delayed conflict as long as possible. But politics does not wait. The Treaty of Eternal Peace with Poland-Lithuania binds Russia to the Holy League, committing it to war against the Ottoman Empire and its ally, the Crimean Khanate. For Sophia, this war represents opportunity. A successful campaign would silence the boyars, unify the country, and transform her regency into something that looked suspiciously like destiny. Victory would legitimize everything. So Golitsyn is placed in command of the army. This is where theory meets geography. The Crimean steppe is vast, barren, and unforgiving. The Tatars do not meet the Russian army in neat formations. They burn the land ahead of the advancing troops. Fields are destroyed, water sources abandoned, horses starve first. An army that cannot feed its horses does not move. An army that cannot move does not fight. There are no decisive battles, no heroic charges, no moment to rewrite the story. Men collapse from hunger and thirst, supplies fail, discipline erodes. The first campaign is abandoned. The second, launched with even greater expectations, fares no better. The Russians advance and stop. They lose men not to enemy blades, but to exhaustion, exposure, and logistics. By the time Golitsyn returns to Moscow, half the army is gone, and there is nothing to show for it. No victory, no glory, no justification. In Moscow, military failure is not interpreted as miscalculation. It is interpreted as weakness. The boyars seize on it immediately. Golitsyn is clever, educated, well-spoken, but he cannot win a war, and in Russia, that is unforgivable. Sophia does not denounce him. She does something worse. She begins to listen to others. By the late 1680s, Sophia's position is no longer unstable. It is exhausting. Every decision now creates a new enemy somewhere else. Every compromise breeds resentment. Every concession to the Streltsy becomes a reminder that armed men can bargain with the state. Golitsyn is still useful, but no longer untouchable. The boyars smell weakness in the aftermath of the Crimean campaigns, and they behave the way Moscow always behaves when it smells weakness. They wait. They whisper. They count days. Meanwhile, Peter is not a boy in the countryside anymore. He is 17, old enough to rule by law, old enough to command loyalty, old enough that regency begins to sound less like necessity and more like possession. Golitsyn urges restraint, delay confrontation, stabilize, do not provoke the Streltsy. Sophia hears something else entirely, waiting. And waiting, she knows, is how she loses everything. It is here that Fyodor Shaklovity rises. Shaklovity does not offer vision, he offers certainty. He understands the Streltsy not as loyalists, but as a force with memory, and memory is easy to aim. He understands Moscow's politics not as debate, but as pressure. He understands that when law runs out, fear steps in to do the job. Where Golitsyn speaks of reform, Shaklovity speaks of threats. Where Golitsyn negotiates, Shaklovity prepares. Sophia does not dismiss Golitsyn. She simply begins listening elsewhere. And in Moscow, that is usually the beginning of the end. By the summer of 1689, the rumors are no longer vague. Peter hears that Shaklovity is sounding out the Streltsy, that men are being reminded of 1682, not as tragedy, but as precedent, that the Narishkin household is being discussed with a kind of interest that is never a compliment. Then the warning comes, not gossip dressed as concern, a direct message carried urgently. that Sophia and Shakloviti intend to act, that his family is in danger, that this time it is not intimidation, it is murder. Peter is told plainly that his mother, his wife, and his child are targets. And Peter does not require proof. He has already seen what happens when armed men are allowed to improvise. Before moving, Peter writes to Ivan, his brother Tsar, not as a rival, as family. He reminds Ivan of 1682, of the blood, of how quickly violence escaped anyone's control. He asks Ivan not to support their sister's next move. He addresses him as Brother Tsar, because Ivan still matters on paper, and paper is still how legitimacy pretends to function. Ivan does not answer decisively, but crucially, he does not oppose Peter either. In Moscow, silence is rarely accidental. Peter understands. He does not convene a council. He does not ask permission. He has learned what hesitation costs. He gathers his household quickly, not only for safety, but for symbolism. His mother, Natalia, his pregnant wife, his child. Because if Sophia's move is to be framed as necessary, Peter's response must be framed as defensive. And the easiest defense to sell is a threatened family. He sends word to allies, to men who owe him loyalty not through favor, but through structure, the kind he has been building quietly for years. This is not flight. It is a refusal to be cornered. Waiting is no longer strategy, it is exposure. And Peter refuses to die like the people he watched die. Peter rides for the Trinity St. Sergius Monastery. This is not instinct, it is calculation. The monastery is sacred ground. To attack him there would be sacrilege. To oppose him openly would require moral justification few are willing to give. His regiments follow, not as a mob, not as an army marching on Moscow, as an escort, disciplined, orderly, modern. That detail spreads faster than any proclamation. Within days, Moscow begins to choose. Boyars arrive cautiously at first, then openly. Foreign-trained units declare for Peter. Clergy arrive and remain. Then comes the decisive moment. Patriarch Joachim travels to the monastery and stays. Sophia understands what this means immediately. She sends envoys. Peter refuses. She sends boyars. They are turned away. Finally, Sophia rides out herself, not as an empress issuing commands, but seeking recognition. 6 miles from the monastery, she is stopped, not arrested, not threatened, simply turned back, publicly. No blood is shed, none is required. Power has already moved. The collapse inside Moscow is swift. Shakloviti is arrested first, interrogated. He confesses readily. He is executed. Recklessness is rarely forgiven, especially when it fails. Golitsyn comes next. He hopes his years of service, reform, and loyalty will count for something. Peter refuses to see him. In Russia, being ignored is often worse than being condemned. Golitsyn is exiled, alive, erased. Sophia is stripped of her titles and confined to the Novodevichy monastery, not tried, not executed, removed. Ivan remains Tsar in name. In practice, he withdraws entirely, sickly, passive, uninterested in a power he never truly fought for. When Ivan dies in 1696, there is no crisis. Peter does not replace him. He simply continues, alone. For a brief moment, it appears that there is peace at last. Sophia lives under guard, the Streltsy are dispersed and broken up. Peter turns outward. In 1697, he leaves Russia for Western Europe. He studies shipbuilding in the Netherlands, learns modern warfare and organization, observes states that function differently than his own, and while he is gone, the past resurfaces. In 1698, elements of the Streltsy revolt again. They march toward Moscow, not because victory seems likely, but because resentment remains. They have been treated poorly, dispersed, disciplined, stripped of their old privileges, fined and taxed heavily. And they blame Peter, because Peter does not forgive, and the Streltsy can feel it. They want the old bargain back. They want Sophia, not because she is gentle, but because she is familiar, and familiarity is what desperate men call justice. They fail, completely. When Peter returns, restraint ends. He interrogates personally, orders mass executions, dismantles the Streltsy permanently, and then he turns to the question he has postponed. Sophia is no longer merely confined, she is a symbol, and symbols in Russia do not age quietly. She is forced to take the veil. Her name is stripped away and replaced. She becomes Sister Susanna. This is not spiritual, it is administrative. For a woman who modelled herself on Byzantine empresses, this was worse than the executioner's block. Execution would have made her a martyr. Becoming Sister Susanna just made her irrelevant. From this moment on, Sophia Alexeyevna no longer exists as a political being. There will be no letters, no visitors of consequence, no ambiguity about her status. The woman who once ruled Russia is reduced to a problem that has been formally solved. As for the Streltsy, their bodies are displayed across Moscow. Some are hung from gates, some from walls, and 3 are hung directly outside Sophia's window at the Novodevichy monastery. They remain there for 5 months. To Peter, this is not excess, it is precision. He had learned that unfinished business has a way of returning armed. He intends not to be interrupted again, especially by his sister. Sophia Alexeyevna ruled Russia for 7 years. She spent 15 in confinement. She was intelligent, educated, politically capable. But more than that, she achieved something no Russian princess before her had. She was seen. She stepped into power. She ruled. She forced a system designed to erase women to acknowledge her existence. And then that same system erased her. She died in 1704, aged 46, and was buried in the cemetery of the Novodevichy monastery, the same place where her power had been quietly dismantled. By the time of her death, great changes were sweeping over the country she had once ruled, changes that would transform Russia forever. The history of the old Russian state was ending. The history of a new Russian empire was beginning. Sophia would fade into history. As for Peter, he did not fade. The frightened child who had watched his friends and loyal servants torn apart inside the Kremlin remembered everything. He remembered fear. He remembered blood. He remembered who hesitated. History would remember him as Peter the Great. Russia, as usual, did not choose its future. It was forced into it.